grand hallway with the quiet, purposeful grace that had become her second nature. She was on her way to the kitchen to prepare a bottle for the baby, her mind a familiar whirl of pediatric schedules, her own lingering fatigue, and the ever-present, low-grade anxiety that was the constant background hum of her life in Port Charles. As she passed the closed double doors of the sunroom, the voices within snagged her attention. It was her mother, Jacinda, and her voice was strained, a sharp, plaintive note cutting through its usual warm cadence. Willow paused, her hand instinctively going to the doorframe to steady herself. The doctors had been clear about her need to avoid stress, to protect her fragile health for the sake of her own future, for the sake of her children. But curiosity, that most human of failings, was a potent force. Jacinda had been unusually tense and secretive for weeks, offering vague excuses about old friends and estate business that Willow, with the finely tuned intuition of a daughter, had known were incomplete. And Michael, why was Michael here, talking to her mother in hushed, serious tones without her? She told herself it was concern. Perhaps it was about the children. Perhaps it was a surprise for her. But the tone she heard was not one of celebration or gentle planning, it was one of urgency, of fraught negotiation. Silently, she shifted her weight, pressing closer to the ornate wood of the door, the seam where it met the jamb offering a narrow channel for the conversation to travel. "Can't keep doing this, Michael," Jacinda was saying, her voice trembling with an emotion Willow couldn't quite place. "Fear? Anger? Every day it eats away at me. She looks at me with such trust, such love." "I know," Michael's voice was low, steady, but with an undercurrent of profound exhaustion that Willow felt in her own bones. "You think I don't feel the same? I lie beside her every night, and the weight of this, it's crushing me. But we agreed. We agreed it was for her own good. For her health." A cold finger of dread traced a path down Willow's spine. Her health. They were talking about her. The secrecy, the whispered consultations, the way Michael would sometimes look at her with an overwhelming sadness that he would quickly mask with a smile, it all coalesced into a single, terrifying point of focus. Her health! Jacinda's voice broke on a sob. "That's the excuse we've been using to justify this monumental lie. We told ourselves we were protecting her from a shock, from a truth that could jeopardize her recovery. But she's stronger now, Michael. She has the children, she has you. She has a will to live that is fiercer than any of us knew. Keeping this from her isn't protection anymore, it's a betrayal." Willow's breath hitched. A lie. A monumental lie. Her palms grew damp, and she pressed them flat against the cool wall, her heart beginning a frantic, painful drum against her ribs. She wanted to push the doors open, to demand an explanation, but a deeper, more primal instinct held her frozen. To hear the secret in its entirety, unfiltered by their attempts to soften it, felt suddenly, vitally important. Betrayal? Michael's voice was sharper now, edged with a defensive anger that was rare for him. "What would you call it, then, if we told her and it sent her into a relapse?" The doctors were very clear. Extreme emotional distress could be catastrophic. "We have to think about Wiley, about the baby. Don't you dare use my grandchildren as a shield for this." Jacinda shot back, her maternal fury giving her voice a new strength. "This is about us. About our guilt. About our fear. We made a choice, Michael, a choice based on a moment of sheer, unadulterated panic, and we have been living with the consequences ever since. But she is living with the consequences, too, and she doesn't even know it. She has a right to know the truth about what happened that night." That night. The words hung in the air, charged and sinister. Willow's mind raced, flipping through a mental catalog of recent nights that could hold such significance. Her illness, the bone marrow transplant, the birth of the baby, but none of them fit the ominous gravity with which Jacinda had spoken. This was something else. Something darker. "What good will it do now, Jacinda?" Michael pleaded, his voice dropping back into that weary, defeated tone. "Will knowing change anything? Will it undo what was done? It will only bring her pain. It will only make her look at us, at me, with hatred." A terrible silence fell, thick and heavy. Willow could almost feel their shared anguish radiating through the door. She closed her eyes, bracing herself. "It will make her see the truth," Jacinda whispered, her voice raw. "And the truth is that the man who saved her life, the man she sees as her hero, is the same man who almost ended it." The world stopped. The grand hallway, with its crystal chandeliers and ancestral portraits, seemed to tilt on its axis. The air grew thin, impossible to draw into her lungs. The man who saved her life, the man who almost ended it. The words echoed in the cavernous silence of her mind, colliding, fracturing, refusing to form a coherent picture. There was only one man who fit the first part of that description. One man whose bone marrow had coursed through her veins, giving her a second chance at life, a future with her family. Hamilton Finn. But that was impossible. Finn was a healer, a gentle soul, a man who had dedicated his life to saving others. He was her doctor, her friend, her savior. The idea that he could have also been a threat to her was ludicrous, a nightmare logic that made no sense. And then, Jacinda spoke again, her voice a broken whisper that carried with it the weight of a shattered world. "It was Finn, Michael. Finn was the one driving the car." Time splintered. The memory, hazy and fractured from trauma and medication, surged to the forefront of Willow's mind with the force of a physical blow. The rain. The slick, black road winding away from the city. The headlights, blinding and sudden, veering across the center line. The screech of tires that seemed to go on forever. The impact, a deafening roar of crushing metal and shattering glass. The searing, white-hot pain. And then, nothing. A void. She had never known the details. The police report had been vague, citing adverse weather conditions and an anonymous, hit-and-run driver who had never been found. She had been the victim of a tragic accident, a random piece of bad luck in a universe of chaos. She had built her recovery, her entire second life, upon that foundation. It was a terrible thing that had happened to her. It was not something that had been done by someone she knew. By someone she trusted. By the very man who had later, with a profound and beautiful irony, become the instrument of her salvation. The pieces, jagged and horrifying, began to click into place. Finn's overwhelming, almost desperate devotion to her case. His guilt, which she had mistaken for a doctor's profound sense of responsibility. The way he would sometimes look at her, his eyes shadowed with a pain she could never quite decipher. She had thought it was empathy. She now understood it was remorse. "But he didn't know," Michael said, his voice strained, as if he were physically wrestling with the words. "He was distraught over Anna, he'd been drinking, he wasn't thinking clearly. He told us it was an accident. A terrible, tragic accident. He was drunk, Michael." Jacinda's cry was laced with a fresh wave of fury. "He got behind the wheel of a car, intoxicated and emotionally compromised, and he plowed into my daughter's car. He left her there, broken and bleeding in the rain. He fled the scene. That's not an accident, that's a choice. A series of cowardly, criminal choices." Willow felt the floor beneath her feet become insubstantial. She slid down the wall, her legs unable to support her, the elegant floral pattern of the runner blurring before her eyes. The cool wallpaper pressed against her cheek, a small, mundane anchor in a reality that was disintegrating. He left me there. The thought was a cold, sharp blade twisting in her gut. All those months in the hospital, all the pain, the fear, the struggle to reclaim even the most basic functions of her body, it had all been presided over by the man who had caused it. He had stood by her bedside, his stethoscope cold against her skin, his voice calm and reassuring, all the while knowing that he was the author of her agony. The hypocrisy of it was so vast, so profound, it felt like a physical presence in the hall, sucking all the oxygen from the air. Her savior and her destroyer were one and the same. The foundation of her recovery, of her gratitude, of her very understanding of the last 2 years of her life, was not just cracked, it was pure ash. "And then we forgave him," Jacinda continued, her voice dissolving into sobs. "We made a deal with the devil. He could save her with his bone marrow, and in return, we would bury the truth. We would let the world, let Willow, believe in the anonymous hit-and-run. We decided her peace of mind was more important than the truth. More important than justice. Willow's mind reeled, trying to process this new, even more devastating layer. It wasn't just Finn. It was Michael. It was her own mother. They had known. All this time, they had known. The two people she trusted most in the world, the pillars upon which she had rebuilt her life, had been complicit in this colossal deception. Their whispered conversations, their shared, worried glances, they weren't just about her health. They were about maintaining this fragile, terrible house of cards. We were desperate, Jacinda. Michael's voice rose, sharp with a defensive panic Willow had never heard from him before. The doctors said she needed a donor, a perfect match, and there wasn't one. She was dying. Right in front of us. And then Finn came forward, not just as a doctor, but as a match. It was a miracle. It was her only chance. What were we supposed to do? Tell her the truth and watch her refuse his marrow? Let her die for the sake of a principle? So we traded her right to the truth for her life, Jacinda wept. We made her a party to a secret she didn't know she was keeping. We let her form a bond with her own attempted murderer. Do you have any idea what that will do to her when she finds out? And she will find out, Michael. Secrets like this don't stay buried forever. They fester, and they rot everything they touch. Willow could feel that rot inside her now, a black, corrosive tide rising in her chest. Every tender moment she had shared with Finn, every word of gratitude she had spoken, every time she had looked at him and seen a beacon of selfless goodness, it was all poisoned, retroactively corrupted by this hideous truth. Her entire narrative of survival, a story she had told herself to get through the darkest days, was a lie. She wasn't a survivor of a random accident, she was the victim of a specific, reckless act, and her recovery had been brokered in a backroom deal made without her consent. She thought of the children. Wiley, who adored Dr. Finn. Her baby, whose life was only possible because Willow had survived. Their entire existence was predicated on this tangled, ugly web of deception. What would she tell them one day? How could she explain that the man who helped save their mother was also the man who tried to destroy her? The voices from the sunroom had lowered again, shifting from the recrimination of the past to the panic of the present. What are we going to do? Michael asked, his voice hollow. If she finds out. She can't, Jacinda said, her tone suddenly firm, desperate. Not now. Not ever. We have to carry this, Michael. We have to bear the weight so she doesn't have to. It's the only way. But it was too late. The weight was already crushing her. Willow pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes, trying to push back the torrent of images, Finn's earnest face, the squeal of tires, the sterile smell of the hospital, Michael's loving gaze that now seemed like a mask, her mother's comforting embrace that felt like a cage. The love and trust she felt for these three people were so deeply entwined with the betrayal that she couldn't separate them. Pulling on one thread would unravel her entire world. She became aware of a sound, a low, wounded animal moan, and it took her a moment to realize it was coming from her. She clamped a hand over her mouth, stifling the noise, fear lancing through her. She couldn't let them know she was here. She couldn't face them. Not now. Not with this knowledge burning a hole in her soul. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she pushed herself up from the floor. Her body felt alien, heavy, and numb. The hallway, once a familiar passage in her home, now felt like a foreign and hostile landscape. She had to get away. She had to find a space to breathe, to think, to process this cataclysm alone. She turned, moving on unsteady legs, and fled back the way she had come, away from the sunroom, away from the voices of the two people who had orchestrated this reality for her. She moved past the grand staircase, past the silent, judging eyes of the Quartermaine portraits, her only goal to reach the sanctuary of the nursery, to be near her children, the only pure, untainted things in her life. But as she walked, the full, horrifying implications of the secret began to unfold in her mind, each one a fresh wave of nausea. First, there was Finn. The doctor. The healer. A man sworn to do no harm, who had caused her immeasurable harm. His heroism was a sham, a performance to atone for a sin only he and her family knew about. Every kindness was suspect. Every medical decision he had made for her, was it truly in her best interest, or was it further penance? Did his dedication to her health stem from professional duty and genuine care, or from a desperate need to absolve his own crushing guilt? The man she thought she knew was a fiction. The real Hamilton Finn was a coward who had run from the scene of his crime, only to later use his medical expertise as a form of blood money to buy her family's silence. Then, there was Michael. Her husband. The man who had vowed to love and protect her. He had stood by as this secret took root and grew. He had looked into her eyes day after day and chosen the lie. His rationale, that it was to protect her, to save her life, now felt patronizing and profoundly disrespectful. He had taken away her agency. He had decided what she could and could not handle, treating her not as an equal partner but as a fragile patient whose feelings were too delicate for the truth. The very cornerstone of their marriage, trust, had been exposed as rotten. How could she ever believe his word again? How could she ever feel truly safe in his arms, knowing he was capable of such a monumental deception? And most painfully, there was her mother. Jacinda, who had been her rock, her fiercest defender. She had been part of this conspiracy from the beginning. The maternal bond, which Willow had believed was sacred and unbreakable, had been severed by this shared secret. Her mother's tears in the sunroom were real, but they were tears of her own guilt, not solely of compassion for her daughter. Every piece of advice, every word of comfort her mother had offered during her recovery was now cast in a sinister light. Had she been guiding Willow toward health, or was she steering her away from any path that might lead to the truth? Willow reached the nursery door and leaned against it, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Inside, she could hear the soft, even breathing of her baby. This was her truth now. These children. Their innocence. Their need for a mother who was present, who was strong. But how could she be strong when the ground had been ripped out from under her? The secret was a cancer, and it had already metastasized, spreading from the moment of the accident to poison her past, her present, and now, her future. She saw her choices laid out before her, each one more terrible than the last. She could confront them. Burst into the sunroom and unleash the torrent of hurt and betrayal that was threatening to drown her. She could scream at Michael, accuse her mother, demand answers. But to what end? It would make the secret real, a spoken thing that could never be taken back. It would shatter her family irrevocably. It would force a confrontation with Finn that would have unimaginable consequences, not just for them, but for his career, for his daughter Violet, for the entire fragile ecosystem of their lives in Port Charles. Or, she could do what they had done. She could bury it. She could swallow the truth, let it settle like a stone in her belly, and continue on. She could pretend she had never stood in that hallway, that her world was still intact. She could look at Michael and see only her husband, look at her mother and see only her protector, look at Finn and see only her doctor. She could choose the peace of ignorance, even though she now possessed the devastating knowledge that made that peace impossible. It would be a performance of a lifetime, a daily act of self-betrayal to maintain the fragile stability of the world she had built. But could she do it? Could she live a lie, knowing that the three most important people in her life were living it with her? The weight of it would be immense. Every family dinner, every holiday, every casual conversation would be a minefield. The secret would be a ghost at every table, a silent scream in every room. And then there was the third, more dangerous option, revenge. A cold, quiet plan to make them all feel the pain she was feeling. To expose Finn, to watch him lose everything, his medical license, his reputation, the respect of his daughter. To make Michael and her mother understand the depth of their betrayal by orchestrating a loss of her own. The thought was dark and seductive, a flash of fire in the icy numbness that had taken hold of her. But she was not, by nature, a vengeful person. That path would only destroy the last remnants of the woman she used to be. As she stood there, trapped in the agonizing limbo of the hallway, the sound of a door opening down the hall made her jump. It was the sunroom. Michael and Jacinda were emerging. Their conversation was over, their pact presumably reaffirmed. The decision of what to do next was forced upon her. There was no time to think, no time to plan. Instinct took over. Willow took a deep, shuddering breath, wiped the tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand, and fixed her face into what she hoped was a mask of calm preoccupation. She pushed the nursery door open and slipped inside, closing it softly behind her. The room was bathed in the soft, warm light of the afternoon sun. Her baby slept peacefully in the crib, one tiny fist curled near its cheek. Wiley was napping in his big boy bed, his favorite stuffed dinosaur tucked under his arm. This was her world. This was what she had to protect. She walked to the crib and looked down at her child, her vision blurring with fresh, unshed tears. The innocence of that sleeping face was a stark contrast to the ugliness she now carried. The secret was hers now, too. A burden she never asked for, a knowledge that had fundamentally altered her. She heard Michael's footsteps approach in the hall, pausing outside the nursery door. She didn't turn. She kept her gaze fixed on her baby, her body rigid with the effort of appearing normal. The door creaked open. "Willow?" Michael's voice was soft, filled with a love that now felt like a lie. "Everything okay? We thought we heard a noise." Willow took one last, deep breath, steeling herself. She turned to face him, a gentle, weary smile carefully arranged on her lips, a perfect forgery of the woman she had been just 30 minutes ago. "Everything's fine," she said, her voice remarkably steady, a testament to a strength she didn't know she possessed. "The baby was just fussing a little. I think he's settling now." She looked at her husband, into the eyes of the man who had shared her bed and her life while sharing this devastating secret, and she knew in that moment that nothing would ever be fine again. The foundation of her life was gone, replaced by a treacherous fault line. The question was no longer if it would rupture, but when, and how, and who would be left standing in the rubble. The secret was out, and though it was confined to the silent, screaming space inside her own mind, it had already begun its destructive work. The life of Willow Corinthos had been divided into a before and the after was a landscape of shadows, betrayal, and a truth that threatened to consume everything in its path. Willow hadn't meant to overhear anything. She had only been passing by the corridor outside the Quartermain living room, a stack of folded towels in her arms, when she heard her husband's voice, low, tense, the kind of tone Michael used only when he was either furious, afraid, or hiding something. She paused, unsure whether to walk away, but then another voice drifted out, soft yet direct. "Jacinda." Willow froze. Until recently, Jacinda had been just another name, a new administrative consultant brought in to help with logistics for ELQ expansions. She'd seemed pleasant, professional, even friendly. Yet in this moment, the air around the two voices felt thick, weighted, as though something was happening behind that door that no one was supposed to know. Willow shifted her grip on the towels, leaned slightly closer, just enough to hear the words but still able to pretend she wasn't really listening. It started with Jacinda's quiet plea, "Michael, you can't avoid this forever." Willow felt her heart give a strange jolt. Michael exhaled sharply, pacing from the sound of shoes tapping. "I'm not avoiding it. I'm trying to handle it without blowing up everyone's life." Jacinda countered softly, "Keeping it from Willow is what will blow everything up." Willow's breath caught. She felt a tightness coil in her stomach, a rising panic she couldn't explain. What were they discussing that involved her? Michael's voice trembled, frustration bleeding through. "If she finds out, if this comes out at the wrong time, it'll wreck everything I've been trying to protect." Jacinda didn't back down. "She deserves the truth. You can't bury this, not when people are already starting to ask questions." Willow swallowed hard. Her mind raced. What truth? What questions? She lowered herself closer to the cracked door, fingers trembling as she steadied her grip on the towels. Inside, she heard papers rustling, documents. Michael let out another exasperated sigh. "When I agreed to keep things quiet, it wasn't supposed to turn into this." Jacinda responded, "But it has. And now the fallout is weeks away, maybe days. The longer you wait, the worse it becomes." Willow felt her pulse thundering in her ears as Michael replied in a hushed voice, "This changes everything for the family. For Willow. For the kids. And I don't even know how she'll look at me when she finds out." Willow blinked rapidly as dread crawled up her spine. The kids? Wiley? Amelia? What could possibly connect Jacinda, Michael, and her children? She pressed a hand over her mouth as Jacinda's tone softened. Michael, listen. I know you're trying to protect everyone, but secrets like these always find a way out. And this one is too big. Michael's voice broke slightly. I didn't ask for any of this. Jacinda, if what you found is true, he stopped abruptly, as if afraid to continue. Jacinda stepped closer, her heels making faint taps. It is true, she said quietly. I double-checked the timestamps. The transactions. The records match. And the DNA confirmation only backs it up. We're past guessing. Willow's heart dropped as if the floor had vanished under her. DNA? Records? Transactions? Her mind ran to the darkest possibilities, the kind she hoped she'd never have to consider again. For a moment, the world around her felt muffled, like she'd slipped underwater. Michael's breath came out shaky. You're absolutely sure? Because once I tell Willow, there's no undoing it. I'm sure, Jacinda replied. And Willow deserves honesty, even if it hurts. This affects her more than anyone. Willow pressed her fingers against the wall to steady herself as confusion swirled through her. She strained to hear more. Michael let out a heavy groan. I've barely slept since you told me. I keep trying to figure out how to say it, how to tell her without breaking her heart. Jacinda whispered, then start by trusting her. She's stronger than you think. Willow's throat tightened as she heard the vulnerability in her husband's voice when he murmured, I don't want to lose her. Jacinda's voice softened further. You won't. Not if you're honest. What you found doesn't change who Willow is. It just changes what she deserves to know. Willow's fingers trembled so hard that one of the towels nearly slipped from her arms. She took a step back, breathing shallowly, trying to steady her frantic mind. She peered back at the door as Michael's voice thickened with fear. If her mother lied about this, if Harmony kept this secret all those years, Willow felt her stomach flip, almost violently. Harmony. Her mother. What about Harmony? Jacinda took a careful breath. She did lie. The records prove it. The adoption file, the hospital documentation, and the test. Michael exhaled sharply, voice cracking. So Willow never knew. She never knew who she really was. Willow felt the room tilt. Her vision blurred for a moment as she steadied herself, her chest heaving with shallow breaths. She mouthed the words silently, what? Though no sound escaped her lips. The conversation inside continued, oblivious to the woman outside who felt her entire identity shifting beneath her. Michael's voice was barely audible. Why would Harmony hide something like this? Why keep this from her? Jacinda replied, maybe she thought she was protecting her. Maybe she didn't want Willow finding out the truth about her father. Willow's hands went numb. Her father? She squeezed the towels tighter, her knuckles whitening as Jacinda continued. And now that the DNA results have been cross-checked through hospital archives and the private database, you know what it means. Michael's voice broke. It means Willow's biological father isn't who she thought. It means he's alive. Willow's knees buckled slightly. She pressed against the wall to keep herself from collapsing. Her mind raced with a tempest of shock, denial, and confusion. She whispered under her breath, barely audible even to herself, no, that can't be, but the conversation inside pressed on relentlessly. Jacinda sighed. You saw the match. You saw the name. There's no denying it. Michael whispered, and the fact that he's connected to everything happening in Port Charles right now, it complicates everything. Willow felt a fresh wave of panic pulse through her. Her father, someone alive, someone connected to something unfolding right now? She waited with her heart pounding violently in her chest as Jacinda continued. We need to figure out how to bring him into this without putting Willow in danger. Michael replied, first I need to tell her. She deserves that. She deserved it the second we got the results. Jacinda agreed quietly. Yes. But don't let it be too late. Willow felt her eyes sting with the beginning of tears as she pressed closer again, unwilling to miss anything. Michael's voice lowered. He doesn't even know she exists. And once he finds out, Jacinda cut him off. He will react. And it may not be calm. Willow clutched her chest, feeling her heart slam beneath her palm. Who was he? Who could possibly be connected both to her and to something dangerous? She trembled as Michael continued, his words thick with dread. I don't know how to tell her that the man she thought was gone isn't. And that he's someone she's crossed paths with without knowing. Willow felt something inside her shatter. Her breaths came out faster as she mouthed, "Oh my God," Michael whispered, "I'm terrified, Jacinda. What if she hates me for keeping this even for a day?" Jacinda responded, "She won't hate you. She loves you. But she will be devastated if she hears it from anyone else, or if the situation escalates before she knows." Willow's tears finally slipped down her cheeks as she stared at the door, unable to believe any of this. The man she thought was long dead, alive? And in Port Charles? Who? Her mind threw out possibilities, none of them fitting, all of them terrifying. Inside, Michael's voice continued trembling. "I just want to protect her." Jacinda murmured, "Then tell her soon. Because the truth is about to come out whether you're ready or not. His name is already surfacing in the investigation."